The good old clap, take one.
That's right.
How many of you knew what you wanted to be when you were 7 years old? I did. I wanted to be world champion.
Hey, is there honesty involved in this podcast? Can we be honest?
You can shut your fucking lips.
And then I'll just say, put them up, what? Let's go.
He's like, you look too pretty on the wave. Get ugly.
We can talk about DMT if you want.
I thought we were boxing.
All right, so we are beyond thrilled to have the most successful high-performance board builder on the planet at this exact moment, Marcio Zouvi of Sharp Eye Surfboards, on the lineup today. Marcio, thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, man. Stoked.
So we're going to get into, my God, like the probably unprecedented success that your company has seen over the last couple of years. But before we get into that, let's get a scene set. Where are you today? Who are you hanging out with? What are you up to?
Well, right now we're just kind of recovering from the final still. It's been like a few weeks and we're still kind of the dust settling. There's a lot going on at the same time. And I feel like almost, I don't know, it's almost like New Year's Eve. It's just like after the party, you just relax. Okay, let's start over again. And it's vacation mode in a way. I'm not shaping anything for any team right now. It's a relief, man. I'm just tired, But no, it's been great. It's been great. Great phase of me, my life personally, and also, for the company, no doubt about it.
That sounds awesome, and obviously reflective of the fact that you and I are recording, just weeks away from your maiden world title, with longtime team rider Felipe Toledo claiming the WSL crown at the recently completed Rip Curl WSL finals at Lower Trestles. For someone like yourself who has been building high performance surfboards for probably over 30 years at this point, to get that world title must be particularly special to you.
Yeah, I really never dreamed of when I started, to tell you the truth. A lot of people have many goals and many objectives, and I love making surfboards. That was number one since I was a grom, and it just obviously having a world title, it's just the top, is just the cream. Is something that I never envisioned, because I started making ding repairs, fixing boards, and then eventually, going into all the steps of construction, from glassing to sanding to everything, and then shaping. So there's a lot to learn, and the road is long. I'm yet to see anyone that really achieves success, fast and figure things out, in an instant. It took a long time, but it came, and obviously it just doesn't depend only on the quality of the boards that I make. Obviously, as there's so many shapers that have top-notch quality out there, but unfortunately, they couldn't have a professional surfer that could represent the brand, that really could showcase, the quality of the design. And a lot of sometimes go in obscurity. People just don't see it, So it's a combination of things. And I was lucky enough to have a guy like Felipe, and obviously now with all the other team riders that I have, they all have chances of having a title, and to really showcase how my boards can perform, So
well, we're going to get to the again, going back to that word unprecedented, like just how you've turned your surfboard team into this buzzsaw at the elite level. But we're going to get to that in a little bit. Going back to the Rip Curl WSL finals day, you're down there, you're on the sand. You've got 3 team riders in Kanoa Igarashi, Jack Robinson, and Felipe Toledo on the men's side. How are you feeling being down there on the day? And in particular, once we'd matriculated through that format, and it's Felipe Toledo facing off against Idolo Ferreira, what was going through your head in those heats as he was inching closer to a world title there?
Well, obviously there was a lot of anticipation, a lot of excitement, because, everything was aligning to go our way, the venue is favorites Philippe by far. He's a local guy. He knows that wave, surfed that wave in all kinds of conditions, and he knew what to use. A lot of the other surfers were training, as you know, the week before. The surf was different. It was a lot more swell in the water, so everybody was trying different boards. Philippe was trying different boards. But then the morning of the event, everything was different. Everybody was questioning, oh man, is the surf dropped? What we're going to ride? So there was that question of a little bit of, oh no, let's reset everything. Everything that we trained the week, forget about it. This is a whole nother day. I think this is the right board. What are you going to ride? Everybody was just kind of scrambling. And I was getting nervous because I was like, oh no, this is not good. But knowing Philippe, and he was relaxed, his mood was perfect. I mean, he just kind of was totally in tune with the day. He's fine. He's just he was even saying, like, I'm not gonna even let it happen for the third heat. I'm just gonna kill it in two. I was like, wow, right on. I love that confidence, but I was nervous because Idalou, even though I don't think Idalou surfed that wave as well as Philippe, that's not his home break, and in his style, I think that wave doesn't suit his style, as much. He's dangerous. I mean, the guy. I mean, everybody saw there was a moment there that I thought, like, oh shoot, we don't have it. He's gonna turn. He's gonna win this thing because he was really landing almost all the airs that he was trying. So I mean, the format, it's great because for me, when you guys changed, when WSL changed, there was a lot of talk about of being fair or not fair with riders that that's been a whole year having a really good year with incredible results and having a chance to not clinching the title in the end. So, but as more we mature the idea, and this is the second year, we started to see that yes, there could be a possibility, which happened with Stephanie and Carissa, but it's a fair game. It's a fair game because it's hard for you to really come from fifth and knock all the way to the end and knock the leader 3 times. So it's an uphill battle that it makes even more fair. There's room for improvement there, I think. But it's still, I love the format and something that you start the day knowing that towards the end we're gonna have a champion, and there's a lot of like a game. There's a lot of excitement and anticipation. So being there that day was just incredible. It was really good.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up too, because that is something that I noticed quite a lot in talking to the CT surfers, both the men and the women, after last year's Rip Curl WSL finals, was about finals venues, et cetera, and really an overwhelming amount of feedback came back and said, like, look, like, just to get a ticket to the finals, you have to compete at Pipeline, Sunset Beach, Super Tubos, Bells Beach, Margaret River, Garajagan, Punta Roca, Saquarema, J-Bay, Chopu, right? You have to perform across those 10 venues just to get an opportunity in the finals. And when it comes down to the finals venue, and I think a lot of them saw it last year and certainly again this year, where they said, we don't want to be at a spot where the wave decides who's going to win the world title. We want to be at a spot where the performance does. And in terms of like a neutral high performance canvas, they're all saying like lower trestles is really, really difficult to beat. I want to talk to you a little bit about the board that Felipe rode on finals day this year. It looked like a similar, if not the same board he rode last year. Can you break that down for the listeners? Like the model, the construction, the fin setup, all of that, or anything that you can share. We won't mind you for trade secrets, but I'm curious.
Yeah, well, the thing with the quad, it happened mid 2021 when Philippe asked. It was his idea actually, because I made plenty quads in the past, always aiming for either big wave surfing or small wave surfing. Never in my mind that it would be an alternative to high performance surfing, until Kelly started to bust some quads in some events. which kind of in sometimes I saw an improvement. I saw advantage in others I didn't. I just didn't feel like he was surfing as good with that. So I knew that there was a design that had to be used correctly, on the right time, on the right spot. And Philippe wanted a quad. Philippe always asked for alternative design sometimes in some breaks that he wanted just to have. We did a bunch of twin fins, a bunch of even fun boards, high performance fun boards. In the quad, I asked, what kind of quad you want? You want a small wave board? I said, no, I want something that would be equivalent to my thrusters. I said, okay, well, let's see what we can come up with. And that's when we did one, and he showed me footage, and it was about 15% faster, but right off the bat. He was just flying. He had to kind of slow down in order to not lose the waves so fast, because he's already a faster surfer. He's a fast surfer. Sure. And for you to do an equipment that makes him go even faster, then it's just like you need to adjust. And when he tried trestles, we saw something there that was like, well, for this wave, which is not like a very powerful, tons of energy type of wave, that sometimes having a faster board would help you, especially going down the line. There's tons of sections to hit. And he was feeling, man, this thing can go through anything here, And all right, let's see then. Let's play around with fins. Let's play around with fin placement, and eventually we play around with also the construction. We did some PUs, some regular epoxies. Eventually, we culminated into talking with the guys at Dark Arts to wrap it with carbon, and see, because what happened is this: the quad, even if you adjust the fins, the projection is not the same as thruster. When you're coming off the bottom turn, if you apply too much pressure, it tends to give and doesn't throw you up there. So I felt like, okay, if I cannot correct this with the fin placement, maybe I can correct with materials. So the idea of getting the carbon, in the carbon construction, the whole board works like it was a stringer. When he applies off the bottom turn, that thing would kind of help him to project, and compensating the lack that he didn't have from the thruster. And the same thing going to when he really leaning on the turns. If you lean too fast, too much, it tends to slide and get off track. So we had to adjust that too. But overall, the result was incredible, and he was just flying. When he surfed 2021 against Medina, I love it. I mean, I just like, man, this is one of the best surfings I've seen you do here at Trestles. So the quad was on the back of his mind. He even took the quad to a few events around the world. It was on the bag. I think he only surfed it maybe Portugal after Hawaii. But, like the first 5 events, really, there were like big waves of consequence that really didn't have much use for that design in particular. So a lot of people ask, man, he didn't use that quad throughout the year. No, he had it on the bag, and he trained with it a couple of times. He always testing to see if that would be the design. Right. But obviously, there was not many waves like Trestles, around the tour, that would have that shape. It's a perfect point with that kind of a wave that's not necessarily too strong, and the advantages of the quad fit right in. I mean, and he decided again 2022 on the final after he had some good thrusters. Don't get me wrong, he had some boards that he felt like, oh man, these are good. But when the day that we woke up and we saw that the surf dropped, it was a little softer. You saw that lip was a little crumbly. The swell direction and the wind wasn't, the best, Trestles. And he's like, I'm going with the quad,
After I'm glad you thank you for that. And I'm glad you brought up the way he surfed last year, because I felt like that was one of the more underappreciated stories of the finals of last year, just because of how well he shaped. And of course, people have ridden quads in the past, but like, these are the most stakes possible for the best surfers on the planet. And he's out there riding something that's such a departure from all of his competitors and doing so well. And even going back again to this year, I'm like, I still feel like it's gone largely underreported. It's like the world champion won the world title on a quad, and you had two other team riders on the men's side, and Joanne Defay on the women's side too. And we obviously can't speak to non-Sharp Eye team riders, but I have heard from a few of them. I think it was Baron Mamiya on a podcast earlier in the year where I brought that board up from last year's finals, and he said that is hands down the best board I've ever ridden. The quad that's set up the way that board is. And I'm wondering if any of your other team riders are like, yeah, I want one of those too, or if they haven't kind of gone into that phase of experimentation with you yet.
They did try some. Canoa had one that surfed really well, and I think Jack had one too, but I don't know if he tried. At least he didn't try prior to the event. But I think it has to do a little bit of a confidence. It depends on the mind of each one individually. Some guys are afraid to go too extreme or experiment too much, especially doing the tour year. You don't have much time to play around. That's fact. Once you figured out the boards that work the best in all the conditions, you have to stick to it, because if for some reason you start experimenting too much and you get off track, you can jeopardize performance, and everything can kind of go bad. So anyway, now is the time, now is the break that we can kind of play around and do things. But Philippe is a different mindset. He's really confident in his ability, and he can switch from one design to the other and really adjust and really in a few sessions he's on it, and he's confident. He's just like, hey, this is fine, so I think that has to do with that. Even though a lot of guys wanted to try the quad to see what it's all about, I think in the end Philippe was the one that's wanted to surf at the contest.
Have you seen an uptick in customer orders for that board with the quad set up between last year and that day? I can really imagine always. Everyone's like, oh, that one,
everybody. Last year we had it, but we didn't feel like launching, because we felt like, well, it's too early, But then again, he surfs, and now he won. And it's going to be it's a good board all around for it doesn't have to be a pro, I mean, you probably ridden quads before. I had really good quads in the past. It's a great design, and so it's going to be a good board for an intermediate, even a beginner guy, if you can tell the difference. Sometimes, you see all these beginners, they wanted to try what the pros are riding, but they're still, on the beginning stages that they can really tell the difference, so.
Yeah, I remember when I worked at Rip Curl Surf Center in high school and college. That was always I want to ride the Kelly board. I'm like, I don't know, I don't even want to ride the Kelly board. Like,
it's funny. Well, it's funny nowadays. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a huge congratulations. Everything that you've built over the last few years, and really for 3 decades, culminated with a well-deserved world title in Felipe, and I think it's the first of many to come. We're going to take a quick break to get a word in from our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to dive deep into who Marcio Zouvi is. We'll be right back. So Marcio, you've been based in San Diego for quite a while now, but not born there, not raised there. Can you give us a bit of background of where you're born, what your family life was like growing up, and when you made the move from Brazil to the States?
Okay. Well, my family is Jewish from France. My grandfather was staying in Paris during the prior to World War II, and he saw Hitler starting to go crazy and cross the borders, and he decided to move to Brazil, which he had business in Brazil already. So my dad escaped. He was already 18 years old when when the war fully broke out. So my dad was 18. He moved to Brazil. End up eventually married my mom later, but when he was 18, got to Brazil. In order to get the citizenship in Brazil, you have to join the military. So he joins the military to get the citizenship, and then Brazil joins the war. And now he's going to be sent back again to Europe. So he was freaking out. My grandfather was freaking out. No, I just got out of there for a reason. And somehow they were able to put him on the reserves, and he didn't go to the war. But eventually marries my mom, and then I was born in Rio. Yeah. And my dad, it was a sportsman. He loved. He started soccer as soon as he moved to Brazil. Then beach volleyball he played all his life. And when I was a grom, I used to go to the beach every day. I mean, not every day, but the weekends for sure, and some days of the week, because he lived in Copacabana, and he owned a little court, volleyball court, and everybody used to gather there and play. And I used to just body surf and boogie board, until it was 11 years old. Then I got a board. That was like in the late 70s. And so I started surfing Copacabana. It's a closeout beach break.
Yeah.
Not much to do there. And eventually my dad moved to Barra, away from the city. He wanted to have a house, move away from apartment living. And then I would start to start to go more towards Baja and the other breaks down south of Rio. And at 12 years old, I really wanted to have. My dad gave me a longboard, and it was everybody already riding the pintails and the 7.0s and even the shorter boards were like towards the late 70s. You're starting to see in Brazil some of the smaller boards and fishes. I wanted to have that. And my dad, no, stick with your longboard. So I was like, no, I got to do something about this. So I went and basically deglassed the whole thing, just pull all the glass on my longboard and expose the foam. Made a huge mess at the garage. And my mom comes in and see all that foam dust, and I basically destroyed the foam because I use his. She had like a little coconut rasp to shave, and I used that like a shoe form and shaved the whole thing. Did whatever. I back then there was no internet. There was no way to learn really. Other someone teach you, or there's no video. There's no information about how to do it. But when I had and did it and destroyed the board, and my dad, what did you do? And it's like, well, I want a shortboard. He didn't want to give me. I made my one, but now I don't know how to glass it. So he realized at my age, I was really curious about those things. So at that point, he said, like, you know what, I'm going to help you out. So we went to a shop, talked to the guys, bought fiberglass, bought resin, and kind of figured out. They told me, hey, you mix these things and you do it. So I started in Brazil building my own boards and for my friends. In fact, I have to tell my friends that had a lot of patience with it. I did a lot of bad boards in the beginning and they bought them all, but that's the learning curve when you don't know what you're doing. And so I appreciated all these guys that are like bought boards that like just bark all the way. And but I had to figure it out. It was a learning, as it goes. I make one board, I try it doesn't work. Why it didn't work? So I went back to the drawing board, shape another one. So that's how it was back then in Brazil. Sometime late 80s, I moved to San Diego to learn English, to study a little bit, and I was going to university in Brazil. I was doing computer engineering. And then I really didn't like that's not what I wanted to do for my living. I like surf. I wasn't a professional board builder in Brazil. I was going to school. I was doing some boards for friends, but not making a living off of it. I was still living with my parents, So, but when I came over here, I had to figure out a way that I could support myself doing my studying. So that's why I kind of went around and take a look on. And then San Diego then in the 80s was the biggest concentration of surfboard manufacturers. It was the biggest factories. We're all based here in San Diego. Unfortunately, not anymore. But back then it was.
It sounds like the first board you shaped, as you kind of highlighted, was almost out of necessity because I have this big board. I want to have a board like everyone else, so I'm gonna make it happen. But then, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like the process of actually trying to reshape that longboard spark something in you, engineering wise or design wise, where you're like, okay, what if I did that next time? Or if I did that next time? Where it's not that you're not interested in your own surfing anymore, but it's like it almost awakens kind of a new passion for you in the sense of, ooh, I can use my hands and I can create something. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, for sure. I was always kind of really curious, and I wanted to understand why the board was working that way. But I had to wait to make another one in order to see if my ideas were correct or not, because if it was a matter of placing fins, everything was glass on, everything was, it was just, there's so many things to learn on the design aspects, and I was eager to keep on making it. So that's why, I always appreciate a lot the patience that my friends had at that time, because they were buying the materials and I was working for free. So you go ahead and buy the blank, buy the glass, I do everything, but I need to make these boards. So if you let me try to, I'm going to learn from it,
Right. Was there ever anything else for you before that you was sort of craftsman based for you? Did you do anything else with your hands, or was this kind of the first project where you're like, oh, this is I like this?
No, I think that was it. I think I was surfing at that time in the 70s. It was, I don't know, I was hooked. It was hooked big time, just by being on the beach. When I was a grom, I remember seeing these guys walking around with these boards, and I was like, oh man, I have to have one of these. My dad, no, you're too young for that. These longboards are too heavy. You can't even carry it anyway. I'm not going to be carrying. It's like, oh man. So I'm looking at all this happening, and I wasn't part of it, and I just loved it. I just want to be. I mean, when I got my first board, I couldn't even sleep. I was just, that thing was right next to me all day long. The smell, I smell up to this day, I smell the wax. It was pineapple.
Yeah.
We had a Wax Research, which is the brand that we could get in Brazil, and I waxed that thing and just left it in my room. The smell of that wax was all over. I was dreaming for the day I was going to put that thing in the water, and it was a old old board, but it doesn't matter. It just didn't matter.
It's magic.
I was
still magic.
It was there.
So it's the 1980s. You're in San Diego, and now you have to support yourself. And as you said, like there's huge board builder factories in San Diego at the time. There's Rusty Priesendorfer, Gary Linden. The list goes on and on. When you say that you had to support yourself, did you go and begin working with one of those factories? Did you start out on your own? What was the process between starting to work in San Diego and then eventually developing your own label in Sharp Eye?
Yeah, I mean, I went around the factories, obviously, because I really didn't know San Diego was there was the biggest center for surfboard manufacturing. I had a friend that represented a Brazilian company here, and I came to stay with him first when I was learning English. And he was like, dude, here's not just surfing. There's a lot of good waves, but here is the biggest factories are here, Diamond Glassing, Pacific Glassing. Back then, everything was glassed in these big factories that could produce 150, 200, 300 boards. I mean, it was massive. And I was like, oh, wow, I want to see these factories, see what it's all about. So I traveled, got in the car, and just went to every single one of them to see it, And I was like, man, I wish I could kind of maybe work somewhere there and learn even more. I know how to build a board now, but obviously I didn't have access to the same materials, the same tools in Brazil, so I still have a lot to learn if I could at least work in one of these places. And so I went around some of the factories, and nobody was really needing anything, but I guess it was the fact that I was from Brazil. I think Brazilians had a really bad reputation. Sometimes they still do, but anyway, back then it was bad because in the 80s there was big fights of Brazilians and Hawaiians, and I guess most of the guys in California on the board building scene had a lot of ties to Hawaiians, and when they find out that was Brazil, no, thanks, beat it. But I was pretty persistent. It was like I kept on going over and just hanging out, and then until they realized that I mean no harm. I just want to build boards. And then Joe Roper, which is the number one surfboard repair guy in San Diego, if not in the country. I mean, he had a factory of surfboard repair. Nowadays he has a factory of glassing too, which is a big factory. But back then it was just more repairs, and he was kind of needing someone. So I went there and did a little test, and he saw that I could manage sanders and things like that. And then he's like, okay, come on down, and we started working there. Yeah.
It's interesting the way you describe it too, because it was similar when you're talking about it in Brazil, and I think there's a big parallel with shaping and even surfing, especially across these decades, because now, as you pointed out, like you can just look at your phone or look at your computer, and if you're a young surfer, you can watch Felipe Toledo in a championship tour event, just bang bang, it's on there. You can watch someone free surfing, you can learn about fitness and diet and board design and everything else. And similarly for shapers today, you probably have so much more access to information than you would have in the past. Like in the 70s and 80s, if you were a young surfer, you just had to wait. Your point of reference was just the best surfer at your beach, or maybe the tour would come to town. You get to watch sort of international surfers for a couple of days. And similarly with shaping as well. And as you said, you just had to go down to the shop and talk to people when you're in Brazil, and then when you're in San Diego, you had to just work your way into ding repair, and it was I guess my point is it was a lot harder to get the information on how to get better at things back then.
Yeah, but you tend to looking back, I wouldn't change anything in a way that sometimes all the information you get online, I mean through computers, through internet, helps you a great deal, no doubt about it. But it gives you a sense that you don't need more. You have enough. I got the information. I know everything. But the reality is not. You have to be step by step. Nowadays, I see a lot of guys wanting to build boards, but they just already wanted to start shaping. I want to just say, how do I figure this software here so I can build my board? And they couldn't care less about the other parts of construction, which for me they are as important as shaping, as designing a board. Because I started doing ding repair, not only I was able to see, it's like you were in a library and you like books. You see books from all sorts of places and people and ideas. Working with ding repair, we're fixing about 80 boards a week. It came from old longboards from the 60s and 70s and guns, pintails, all the way to the modern thrusters from Channel Islands to Lindens and Rusties and the top guys at that time. And so I was having access to everything you can think of being able to see all these designs. And really, I was like, oh man, this is a dream, So not only I was understanding and figuring it out, but also I was getting good at it, as far as fixing, dealing with resin, materials, and all that. So I started to glass boards. I started to sand boards. And nowadays, I translate that when I'm building boards for the pros. When I design a board for Felipe, for Canoa, for anyone, for Jack, after the board is shaped, I go down there and I talk to my glasser. Okay, this one, we're going to do it this way. Let's do it. And he gives his input. I give my input because I know what I'm talking about. I know how to glass a board. Same thing goes after the sanding. Let's sand it this way. Let's do this way. Edge wise, weight, all these things are a factor. When sometimes I see factories that don't have that under their control because they just shape and then they subcontract the glassing. They're only going to receive the board finish. They cannot really control these details, which for me they're super important.
That's interesting. It reminds me of kind of try the way I talk to my kids about the difference between like there's earned information and then there's accessed information. And if you pull up the information on your phone, you're just accessing it. But if you have to go out and work through the process and read about it and talk to someone about it and do it, you're earning that information. There's a huge difference, like in terms of what sticks and what you're able to then develop. So you're out there. It's the 80s. It's San Diego. How does the Sharp Eye label come into being? When does it come into being? What was the intention when you started it?
Well, I was doing ding repairs and I obviously started to make my own boards and some friends' boards in San Diego. I had no label. I had like a Z dot, just like Rusty had an R dot. I had a Z dot, and just for lack of any idea, it's just like, well, I just need to make a board instead of, So anyway, so I'm making some boards, and here comes this guy that was a really good surfer from Florida to fix his board. He had a Channel Islands. He was sponsored by Channel Islands, I think. His name was Boyce Hundley. And then he goes and is like, yeah, I need to fix this thing. And I ask how this board works. Well, I'm just starting to work with those guys, it's not exactly, my dimensions and blah, blah, blah. Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm curious if you would like to try one. Oh, you shape? Yeah, and I shape some boards, So I show him some of my boards. Just like the movie North Shore when Turtle goes in the closet and pulls the little board to show. And he goes, oh, wow. Well, yeah, just go ahead and make me a board, because he just didn't think much about what's this Brazilian guy doing ding repair here is going to make me a board. But I kind of, wow, a good surfer wanted to try my boards. Let me rush this thing. So I went ahead and grabbed the blank, did the shape. In 3 days, I had a board for him. When he came back to pick his Merrick repaired, I had the board done. And he took it out to try, and it ended up being, I was lucky. The board actually worked pretty good. And he came back and said, dude, can you make me another one? This thing worked pretty good. It's like, oh, let me try. So it went from there. All of a sudden, I started to get a lot of friends and a lot of guys, asking because they like it. And obviously, I believe at that time, I took a break and I went to Australia for a few months. Came back with some news. I think at that time was right during the transition of the flat bottom V bottoms into the concaves. That was like really early 90s, because Greg Weber came up with this crazy idea of band a 7.0 and put ton of concave. I mean, we're talking about an inch deep concave. And when I went to Australia, I started to see the brands in Australia experimenting with these super deep concaves. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. I haven't seen that in the US. So I was eager to go back. And as soon as I get back, I wanted to make some of these for myself. So I was one of the first to incorporate, this into my designs and have people try, and people kind of, wow, this is something there. It's really different. A lot of bite, a lot of drive, and I started to use that. And so yeah, I was starting to get a lot of orders, and I was like, man, I need a brand. I need a name. I cannot continue to build boards with no name. Z dot. Pretty soon Russ is gonna find out. It's gonna, hey man, change that. I was like, I was like, okay, I got to do something. And I had this idea. So like, okay, what do you need as a designer when you're in the shaping room, when you're looking at all those lines? You have to have the eyesight. You have to have the vision that not necessarily everybody does have. I'm seeing things that sometimes I show to people that they're not seeing what I'm seeing. And I was like, you better have a sharp eye to see these things, and then I was like, yeah, sharp eye, that's kind of name that could be it. So I came up with the name, and eventually I had to create a logo. So I wanted to stay with the eye without being like too, I don't know, to look like a Hindu eye, something that. So I kind of incorporated the eye being an eye, real eye, in a wave. The wave has the eye of the barrel, that kind of thing. So kind of a mix and blend, and that's what it came out to be.
It is a cool logo. I mean, and it's such a. I'm so glad you mentioned that trip to Australia, because it does feel like so much in surfing, whether you're building boards or whether you're a professional surfer, is timing based. And I mean, even just looking in the last 50 years, like the tectonic shifts in board design and how that's impacted the way surfers approach wave riding. You see, like, surfers rise and fall, shapers rise and fall, and so much changes so quickly. And I'd imagine in the 90s and the aughties and the 2010s, you've been through a lot, not just design wise, but the way that people want to surf. And then also from a business standpoint, like brick and mortar retail to, do you have your own shops? Do you do online stuff? The things from your perspective, I would imagine over the last 30 years, must have changed so fast for Sharp Eye in so many ways.
Oh, hugely. I mean, starting with the actual technology of the basic building, the shape. I remember, we were getting busy when we formed the company in 1993, and we started to get a lot of boards, and there's so many boards I could shape by hand. So I hired some people to help me out. We developed our first, profiling machine, just to take the rocker down from the blanks. But there's still a lot of labor. So sometime in 1996 or 7, I mean, before that, here in America, I heard about the guys in Encinitas. They kept a lot secrecy around it. Was when they retrofitted a CNC machine from a different application. I believe it was like furniture, and adjusted to be able to secure a foam blank. And with a CAD programming, which is fairly complex programming, they were starting to cut blanks. Nobody knew. There was rumors about a machine shaping and blah blah blah, and nobody really had access to it. I think one of the first companies to have access was Channel Islands, and I think was Tony Channing was involved with that, and some other guys that eventually became KKL, and if I'm not mistaken. But I was at the same time going to Brazil in sometime late in the 90s, like 97 or 98. I came across this Brazilian doctor. The guy was a doctor by trade, and but he was also a board builder. But the guy was extremely intelligent, and he was like one of those scientist minds that like just always figuring things out, how to improve things. And he was like, you know what, this way of shaping boards with a planer, this is old. There's nothing to it. You can't reproduce it. You take forever. It's taking an hour to do this. It's just, this is not smart. I'm going to create something. And he, believe it or not, he created the first CNC machine customized for the individual shaper, that you did not have to go to school to learn CAD programming. You could just learn. He created both. He created the software and he created the physical machine. But the software was really well taught, that he knew he was talking, his client base was shapers, wherein the majority did not have a deep education. And so he made it a software that was really interactive, really easy to learn, that you could build your board. So I saw that idea. I was like, man, this thing really makes a difference. So I cut a few boards there when I was in Brazil to see. I was like, I wanted to get it. So I was the first guy in California to buy one of those. That was in 2000. We ordered in 1999. Our machine came in 2000. Then Rusty bought one in 2003, I believe. Lost bought one in 2003 also. Everybody bought one. Timmy Patterson, you name it. Everybody had to have one of those. Because now you're independent. Now you don't need an engineer to scan your board. Because before, right, that's what we were doing. We're glassing, hand shaping a board, glassing the board, giving to these guys. These guys with old-fashioned scanners would scan the board, and they would reproduce that. But if I wanted to change anything, I couldn't. I had my hands tied. because I would depend on these guys to modify, and these guys were not shapers, so they really, the ideas were lost in translation right there, and I was like, okay, it was great for production, it was great to copy things, but I need something that I can change. I can be in charge of my ideas and translate that into what I wanted to make. And that machine was was a turning point on surfboard design.
Yeah. You've been on the record in the past as saying it seems like your design tendencies are very collaborative. You have your own ideas, but you might be working with a Sharp Eye licensee in another country, and there's a collaboration of ideas. Similarly with team rider feedback. In those early years through the mid to late 90s and the early 2000s, what did the Sharp Eye team look like in terms of who was on it? And what kind of feedback did you get that helped you evolve through those years?
I had some guys, and some are doing, very consistently QS runs and events. Some were just really good surfers locally that helped me out a lot, on the learning process. But really, to be able to have a CT guy, that was completely out of my league. I don't think I was, number one, ready for it financially, or even with the knowledge to be able to give the proper equipment on the tour for someone at that time. But not that I didn't want it to, I wanted to, but I felt like, okay, this is a little too much for me right now. And then I had a guy from New Jersey that was knocking at the door forever. His name was Dean Randazzo, and he qualified, if I'm not mistaken, it was 1996, 1995. And he just, it was 1 year because he got injured. And but that was my first debut on the tour. Eventually came other guys, but yeah. But the team was basically amateurs and some semi-pros, but nothing on the tour. And I had some covers. I had a surfer in the surfing cover in 1995 with Todd Morcom from Florida and Dan Kennedy from California. That was luck. That was really luck, because back then, for you to have a cover on the magazine, you better invest some money in the magazine, or either the photo is something out of this world that they will pick to be the cover, or centerfold, or even back cover. So you have to be one of the top advertisers in order to have that. And somehow I did, and I did on the same month. I did into 1995 on March. Both issues came Surfer first. I went to buy the Surfer, and I looked. No way, I got the cover. Is the Surfing out yet? Oh, Surfing out tomorrow should be out. Comes in the Surfing, and I got the cover on Surfing. I was like, it's insane. I don't know what happened there. I mean, maybe it was a mistake or something, but I got it. So that helped me out a lot. That helped me out a lot. So people are starting to see, okay, well, maybe there's something there with this guy. But
when you mentioned before the financial readiness to support surfers at the CT level, I'm curious. You mentioned the Jersey Devil, Dean Randazzo, was on tour in the 90s. For perspective, how many boards per season would Dean expect to get from you at that time? In the 90s, because I'll get to it in a minute, but there's some horror stories about how many boards CT surfers get these days. But I'm curious as to how many they got when Dean was surfing on tour in the 90s.
I think back then was about 30 boards. It wasn't that many. Besides the Hawaiian quiver, because Hawaiian you used to have to bracket sizing a little bit more, but the tour stops you could use a lot of the same, and it wasn't, boards break, obviously, you have to replace here and there, but no, it wasn't like what it is today. Today it seems like it's a lot more.
Well, you don't have to name any names to protect anyone, but And you don't even actually have to talk about your own
I will
team.
name names. Now is my time to vent out.
Let's go. Let's put the pressure on them. What would you expect for like a top 10 championship tour surfer, whether they surf for you or not? How many boards do you think they go through per season?
Minimum, I would say 60 boards.
Mm-hmm.
Maximum double, 120 boards.
Yeah.
Realistically, every stop on the tour, it's expected that I'm going to shape between 10 and 15 boards. Because I feel like, I wanted to cover all angles of that break from, different conditions that can arise, different, like Bell's Beach can be Bell's big, can be Bell's soft, can be Bell's on the point. It can be so many bells. And you wanted to be able to have the guy ready for it and be able to pull out of the bag the equipment for it. So we felt like this is enough. But sometimes that's what I tell most of my guys. I say, guys, you got a magic one, save it. Because boards, there's so much involved in the manufacturing. Like, for example, when the tour was starting right in March, right? In March, here I am getting blanks that were blown in the winter in California, where sometimes there's a little bit of humidity on the wood. So the first batches of boards that I was making wasn't the best batches that I can make. Just starting off from the blank itself, and then glassing in not so ideal environments, even though I have heaters and stuff. But it was not easy to make the crispiness, nice light board like I can make it during the spring and summer. So I always say, like, hey, boards sometimes can be like wine on that level, like you get a good one, save it just in case. But they don't listen. They just go and ride the magic one on the training. They break it, and then they expect that I'm going to be producing these magic boards over and over and over, which is great. I'm honored for all the confidence, but I know I'm my foot on the ground. I know the reality that this doesn't happen all the time. I will have to work hard for it. That's why I kind of try to explain to them and educate them and say, listen, there's certain things that make the board magic, a combination of factors that I cannot reproduce all the time. I can reproduce the shape the best of my ability. You can barely tell the difference. It's almost the same. But if the blank had a little bit of a difference on the type of wood, or the foam was a little bit heavier, then the glassing was a little bit, just change the balance. It's another board. On that level, these guys, it's another board in the water. Maybe my level or a beginner or intermediate level won't tell the difference. But these guys, this is the Formula One of surfing.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, every minute detail matters.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I've been around enough CT surfers when they've gotten their packs of boards before, and I'm an intermediate surfer, but I've been around boards quite a bit. And I will look at, I've seen this happen so many times. The surfer will get 12 boards. They're all exactly the same. And they'll grab them, feel them. Yes, no, yes. And I'm like, how are you doing that? And it's something that is, maybe it's a bit of bullshit, but it's also, as you said, they're F1 drivers, and their sensitivity to the equipment is so high that 99.9% of surfers would be like, I've got no idea why these boards are different.
It's true.
We're going to take one more break to get another word in from our sponsors, and we'll be back with our final segment. We'll be right back. So we've orbited this a few times, but my goodness, in the last few years, the Sharp Eye program has assembled, bar none, the most high performance surf team on the planet, and just at a glance, we talked about, the recently crowned world champion Felipe Toledo, two-time Rip Curl WSL Final 5 competitor Joanne DeFay, but you've also got Baron Mamiya, Cody Young, Jake Marshall, Jet Schilling, Kano Igarashi, Macy Callahan, Miguel Pupo, Morgan Sibilic, Rio Waida, like the list, Tatiana Weston Webb, Silvana Lina, the list goes on and on and on. And we haven't released it yet, but we have done a board builders ranking for the season. We've done it both men's and women's. ranking the performances of surfers who finished in the quarterfinals or higher. You are far and away the winner from the 2022 Championship Tour season,
right on.
In a huge way. And these numbers were done actually before the finals, so it was after Tahiti. But on the men's side, for example, you are 3 times the points of what the second place has on the men's side, and on the women's side, you're just there at second, and then again on the combined, you're just head and shoulders above everyone. It's really impressive, and it was something that you could kind of see for a few years, like the relationship with Felipe, the acquisition of Kanoa Igarashi, and just people coming into the program. Given what we've talked about on today's podcast already, what's it been like from your seat over the last few years and just seeing this team build into the best surf team on the planet?
In a business standpoint, it's a huge investment that a lot of my competitors, friends of mine, some people say, like, you're out of your mind. You're crazy. This is too many people. How can you manage, But I love the competitive side of surfing too. I love surfboards, but I love the competition. And I really embrace the WSL, league in a way that it's not only showcasing the best surfers in the world. It's the opportunity to see how far my equipment can go, how well they gonna perform, and I want to see that. I want to see my boards in all conditions going to the point that people really see, wow, this is something there, That's for me, considering that we are 95% of what we make here at the factory is high performance, different than other brands. There's a lot of brands, surfboard brands, that really went into a variety of designs, call it retro. Nowadays, not retro anymore because it's valid. It's current. Yeah. But the variety from fishes to hybrids, and which is great. A lot of these guys are doing really well financially. They don't produce as many boards. Numbers, they're not there, but they have a lot of value in it. They charge really high prices for their boards. There's a lot of value in the glassing and all that. So they don't almost feel the need on really getting into the high performance surfboards. But I love the thing, So I throughout all these phases since I started, a lot of people ask, shops ask, can you make some longboards? And I was like, no, I don't make longboards. Okay, yeah, because the demand is here for longboards. Everybody wants longboards. It's like, yeah, but I don't. But I know a lot of guys that can do really good longboards. I can direct you towards them. And it's on and on. I mean, every time people are asking me to do all kinds of designs, and I just always shine and I focus 100% into the high performance and the competition, because that's what I like. That's what's my passion. So yeah, the thing with the team growing, obviously now it's this is it, but I can't afford to have anyone because I can't physically shape that many boards. But obviously you have to understand that the business was done as it was growing internationally, was allowing my licensees to jump in and be able to participate on this team process. So Australia, Brazil, Peru, France, Portugal, everybody have the local team in which the local shapers make the team boards for the local guys. And these local guys, that we have quite a few, can eventually be the next CT guys qualifying. That's an example, Rio Aida, getting sharp eyes made in Bali. And now it's qualifying. Same thing, Australia actually have Macy before she qualified. So, but now Jack is different because Jack was already on the tour, but decided to join forces with us in Australia. But our shapers on these licensee places, they're really good. I mean, I see the sharp eye boards made in Australia. Dude, we're fighting. to see when I get boards here and I show to my sanders, look at the edge that these guys are doing in Australia. They're doing better than us. Let's do better than them. You know what I mean? So it's a healthy competition in a way, because we are all about the same designs that we're creating, but we wanted to be able to improve and beat each other. So that's how it came about. Like right now, a lot of the Jack's boards are made in Australia. There's some boards. Miguel Pupo got a lot of boards made in Brazil. Rio got a lot of boards made in Australia, in Bali, and got some here. Tatiana gets boards from here, gets boards from Brazil, got boards from Australia. So the way I structure the business allows all my team, which is a large team, as they travel, they can order the boards if they need it, and have the boards made where the licensees are located.
That makes a lot of sense. That is like one of the, it is one of the interesting things that I've heard over and over and over the last few years, whether it's from CT surfers that have been getting a lot of boards from a lot of different shapers, or people around the CT, maybe their coaches or otherwise, that same thing, they can have access to all these other boards. And the feedback I've heard over the last few years when someone's kind of decided I'm going to be riding Sharp Eyes is always the same, which is all these boards are really good. For some reason, these boards from Marcio just accelerate. They get faster through my turns instead of slowing down, which is really, I don't understand how it happens, but that's what's happening. And number one, so congratulations, that's kind of incredible. But then number two, I'm always baffled because, there are world-class board builders, dozens, building boards for championship tour surfers. And I don't think I've ever seen a moment in time where the consensus is, for some reason, these boards are the way to go. You brought up Jack Robinson. That's a perfect example, because Jack's someone that recently signed with you, and as someone with the profile that he has and the attention that he has, he could have gone really with anyone. I'm sure he was getting boards from everyone, but in the end, he went with Sharp Eye because those are the boards that worked. It really, really is impressive in the sense of what you guys have been able to accomplish in the last couple of years.
Well, but I gotta let you know that besides making the boards around the world, and working with these guys, we have a team manager too. You probably know Yufu.
Yep.
That
Yufu
helps a great deal put this all together in a way that the tour is so fast paced, one event after the other, 1 week in between, that we have to. I travel a lot. He travels a lot. So when I'm not in the event, he is in the event. Sometimes we're both in the event. And he's not only making sure everybody is okay with the equipment, but sometimes he's carrying. I mean, he went to Australia, to Margaret River, with 2 huge bags, 12 boards in each bag, getting bus. I mean, the guy worked a lot, to be able to support this large team in all the stops, making sure everybody is covered. And I like to go to the events because number one, I see everybody there, and I talked about the boards and I see what's working, what's not, in order to go back to the drawing board and change what I need to change, so that way next year, because I'm going to make boards for that venue only next year. So next year, here I am fresh on my mind, come back home, make all my notes on my computer and everything else. So that way we can upgrade and make the changes for when he goes back to whatever, the place again. So that's how we work, but it's a teamwork. It's not just me on the shaping room shaping the boards and you guys on your own. There's a lot involved with that, and otherwise, it couldn't be done. And like you said, a lot of the other manufacturers, the guys that I see out there on the tour right now, DHD, Loss, Mayhem, Channel Islands, JS, all these guys, they make incredible boards. They do. But you have to devote the time. You got to be on it. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. You got to make everything click together. And you have to be... And sometimes there's many, many spots on the tour that I was solo. I think I was the only shaper there. I didn't see anybody else. I look at where's everyone? Nobody came. And I understand everybody have big business to run, but if you wanted to be successful on the league, if competition is your gig, you got to devote the time, no doubt about it. You know.
You just put Yufu's business out on Front Street because some of your team riders that haven't had him bring boards to them, they're like, well, he can just take my boards for me. Everyone's going to be fired. I'd say that's the way it goes. Yeah. Have you, given the success of the last few years for Sharpeye, have you had to turn elite level surfers down? Like surfers coming to you and saying, I want to be on the team, I want to ride for you. And as you pointed out, you physically can only make so many boards. Have you had to say, look, we can't do it?
Well, there's two kinds of approach, right? There's approaches of people that just wanted to see if the grass is really greener, and they just order a board, but they're not willing to really change anything. If they are lucky and find a good board, they most likely going to take back to their sponsors and show the board, hey, this is what I want. This has worked good for me. You know what I mean? So in the past, I wasn't really, sensitive to that. I whoever approached me, yeah, sure, I'll make you a board. Nowadays, I'm a little bit more, hesitant to do it, because if we're not looking for another rider, and if he's not gonna be another competitor, I don't want to make a design that it's gonna make him surf better and eventually win one of my guys that's riding my equipment. You know what I mean? So that's something that I need to take in consideration. But yeah, there's a lot of guys that wanted to just test the boards, and others really have a hard time. They're just like, yeah, I'm not being able to really figure it out with my shaper, which, like I said in the beginning, it's tough. You have to have a dial because it's 1 week between events. Everything is running too fast. If you're not dial, you're traveling with boards that you're not confident with, and then the chances are you're not going to get results.
The point you made about not wanting to build boards for someone who may end up beating, your team rider eventually is an interesting one in the context of how big your own team is, right? So, for example, at the finals, you had Joanne, lone Sharpeye team rider on the women's side, but you had Kanoa, Jack Robinson, and Felipe, which is 60% of the men's side, all vying for one world title. Do you spend any time, maybe there isn't any to manage, but I'm wondering, is there any tension between those elite level team riders in terms of how much attention they get from you, how quickly they get boards from you? And do you have to spend any time kind of managing, in a lot of cases, justified egos in the sense of like, yep, we're getting yours done on time, et cetera, et cetera?
No, so for the most part, we've been able to do a really good job on that. It's funny because Kanoa, when he switched to us, when we're sitting down before he signs the contract, one of the first questions he asked was, I wanted to tell you straight out, are you going to give more priority to Felipe than me? Because Felipe's from Brazil and you're a shaper from Brazil. And I was like, no, Sharpeye is an international company. And I am going to give priority 100% to everyone that's riding my boards. I don't care if you're from Brazil, if you're from Japan, if you're from America, from Australia, from Bali, it doesn't matter. You're riding my boards, you're number one. So we give the same attention to every single one of them. They have their boards on time, whatever they need, and we help them to achieve what they need. And so far, it's been working. I haven't get many complaints, but yeah, so that's the approach.
Makes sense. You mentioned right when we started that you're enjoying a well-earned break, after such a successful couple of years, culminating with the first world title at Lowers a couple of weeks ago. For you, looking at the next few months, when do you start moving back into a regular work pace, and how do you prepare for the start of the championship tour season at the end of January in pipeline?
Right now, we're taking this break to launch a few of our alternative models. We have a few twin fins and things that are not necessarily going to be ridden on the tour. So we kind of are launching that and working that way. But I already have a phone meeting with Baron. Actually, supposed to have it today, and already preparing the changes that we're doing on the quiver for Hawaii. It's great to have a rider from Hawaii like him. It really helps me out a great deal, because not having a Hawaiian rider, it really makes things difficult sometimes, because I had to wait until the guys go to Hawaii to try, and sometimes they surf for a few heats, and this is the feedback. And having a guy that's their pipe, that surfs all the breaks, being a local, oh man, it's a great information, great feedback that I really, it's priceless. So right now I have some changes on the step ups and the semi guns that I wanted to start feeding him now. I know it's early, the swells are not there yet, but we're gonna start working on it so that way I can be prepared. So when the tour arrives, I have some news. I have some updates, on the designs. So, and that's how it goes. But I have for next year basically all the models that they're being working in, all the stops, everything is already filed, and so I usually talk to them to see if it has been any change, if anybody gained weight or stronger, or there's been any issues, if we should do exactly what we did last year, or if we're going to change a little bit. So all these things we get in touch before, and then I start the production.
I love it. Well, we put a feeler out to our listeners on Instagram at the Lineup Pod for questions, and we got a lot back, but we whittled it down to 3 for you. The first question is from @DDennis SK Kevin, Dennis Kevin, and the question is: if you had to have one board for California, what model would it be?
My model would be the Inferno 72. That's what I ride 80% of the time. If you're into high performance surfing, obviously, we're talking about if you like your surfing to be, speed, turning, just like, what you see out there with the pros, then that would be a board that would fit the best, most of the conditions, most of the beach breaks around, some of the point breaks, a lot of the conditions. 80% of the time, that's what I ride.
Second question is from @Shane_Hunt793, who asks, what is the biggest tip you can give someone who wants to get into shaping?
Well, I wouldn't start shaping, definitely. I would start learning how to build a proper surfboard. I would go for all the steps, fixing your board first, well done, perfectly. Then eventually going into whatever you like the best, laminating, sanding. I would go all these steps. Shaping would be my last concern. It comes out so much easier and so much better. Your understanding of all the lines and everything falls into place easier than if you're trying to figure things out right now at a design level and really skipping all the other steps. That's my take. Maybe I'm old fashioned, Nowadays everything is computer and bam, you're there and raising the trophy,
Oh, it worked out for you. I think that's pretty good advice. The last question that we picked is from @McDonald228, who asks, in your opinion, what is the next frontier for high performance surfboard design?
It's the wave pool. The wave pools, the way they're going fast pace, we're gonna be able to really now have a proper training ground that we can experiment and have a feedback that's a lot faster. I give you an example of my Hawaiian boards. Not being from Hawaii, not staying in Hawaii, it takes a season for me to upgrade my guns. Now right. Imagine you having a break that is man-made that reproduces the same wave over and over and over. I can really narrow the best design for that particular wave a lot faster than before, which is going to allow me to really experiment and really be able to go whatever directions the riders wanted to go. Because usually that's how it happens. These guys, they're always, pushing the envelope to go faster, higher. And we as shapers need to allow that to happen. So we need to figure out what we need to change in order to let them do what they want to do, you know.
Very cool. Well, thanks to everyone that wrote in at the lineup pod. We're now down to our final segment. So it's time for the lightning round presented by BF Goodrich. These are 10 questions for you to answer as quickly as you can. First question. If you could only have one board set up for the rest of your life, single fin, twin fin, thruster, bonzer, quad, or finless, which would you choose?
Thruster.
Coffee or tea?
None.
Burrito or pizza?
Pizza. Good pizza.
Last book you read?
Oh, man. The last one was Golda Meir. It was her biography.
Best surf film ever?
Surf film?
Mm-hmm. Or video, whatever.
Man, Storm Riders? I love Storm Riders. Yeah.
What is one wave you never have to go back to?
I don't want to go back to?
Yeah.
Well, Chopu. No, I love Chopu. I love Tahiti. Don't get me wrong, Tahitian. I love Tahiti. It's just that wave in particular is not my turf anymore.
That's fair enough. If you only get to surf one wave for the rest of your life?
For the rest of my life, I guess a wave like Trestles or abs, what I surf a lot, the Sunset Cliffs. Love abs.
Mm-hmm. Best person to share a lineup with?
Lined up with my friends.
Worst person to share a lineup with?
The people that don't respect the ones that came before.
Last one. Finish this sentence. I will next achieve a state of happiness by
doing the right thing.
Great. Marcio Zouvi, thank you so much for coming on the lineup. Congratulations on all your success. It's well earned. Man, it was so nice talking to you and hearing your story and hearing your thoughts on where surfboards are at in 2022. And yeah, enjoy your well-earned break. And I look forward to seeing you very soon.
Great. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for everybody. Talk soon.